The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
As you might imagine, a football Friday, we have a lot going on the program today, including Ollie Lane, one of our two favorite ball centers, along with Cooper Mays, who will have up later today. The Ball Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. But today on the program, go ahead and click that thumbs up button and that like button. Why? Because we've got a monstrous show on tap. Coming up, my reasons why the Vols will thump Kentucky, and I mean that sincerely. And I'm back on track with picking the Vols pretty much perfectly, as I had 24-16 last week, 2 weeks ago against Alabama, 2 Saturdays ago. So I've really only missed on one game of being very close to the score. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just telling you it's a fact, and that would have been the Arkansas loss. So we'll talk to Ollie Lane about Kentucky playing with their backs against the wall. I'll have my prediction. Tennessee with a big recruiting day in October. Now, that usually doesn't happen nowadays, but they flip a Wisconsin commitment and pick up another commitment. Now, the Wisconsin young man who we're going to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, better than you would think based on a 3-star linebacker, and better, more impactful than you would think. And yes, he's from Nashville, which Caleb doesn't like prospects from Nashville.
That's not true. I say they're not as good as their star ratings typically when they're from Nashville. They can still be elite. I'm just saying you got to dock half a star.
Fair enough. This day, well, if you dock half a star, you got him at 2.5. He's better than that. This day in Tennessee sports history, also the stat of the day. And what about those Lady Vols scoring 135 points in the exhibition? Wow, bank on it. The Lady Vols offense is really, really good. So we'll get into that and more. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We dive into 4 downs, and that's brought to you by Banks & Jones.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So Caleb, I know you're going to have your pick a little bit later, but can you give me an idea sort of where you're leaning before I'm going to give you the reasons that Tennessee is absolutely going to destroy Kentucky?
I'll tell you this. As a bettor who has had a rough year, I'll just give you a hint on this. I'm going against what most of the betting expert advice says about this game. Most of the betting experts and models have a certain belief on this game, and I believe the opposite. But I will say, when you cover a team, I've learned this, Dave, you and I actually do know Tennessee better than Vegas and odds makers do.
No, totally agree. All right, so let's go ahead and set up the poll question, and that is Tennessee will beat Kentucky by 0-10, 11-20, or more than 20, or could the Cats upset the Vols? Do you think that's a realistic possibility? So 4 downs is now. Cooper Mays of the Ball Report will tell you what to do. The Ball Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. Well, the center told you to do it. He makes the line calls for the Vols, so you better do it right now. Like and subscribe and turn those notifications on. 4 reasons why Tennessee will not only beat Kentucky, but will absolutely thump them. What is first down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
Thanks, Coop. Cats have no claws at quarterback. Listen, you don't ever want to be involved in a quarterback controversy. I think that everybody's seen how that plays out, no matter which team you root for. And I know a lot of people here are Tennessee fans, but we have seen quarterback controversies pretty much at every school. And the last thing you want is one of those going into November. So here's what you have. Against Auburn on Saturday, Kentucky made a mid-game change at the most important and most difficult position in sports. Brock Vandegrift was shown the bench at halftime, replaced by Gavin Wimsatt. You can read about this on Off the Hook Sports, but don't do it now. Watch us here. Wimsatt, more of a running quarterback, but they really didn't even do that so much. I like Tennessee's defense and gap discipline and hemming in a running quarterback. They have tried to say throughout the week that they're not really sure which direction they're going to go, but either direction they go, it's going to be a bad direction, because last week in the loss to the Tigers, the Auburn Tigers, led by Pastor Hugh, Vandegrift completed 9 of 17 passes for 120 yards and an interception. Wimsatt was just as bad, completing 3 of 10 passes for 34 yards and an interception while running the ball 9 times for 23 yards. So I could say, Caleb, if I wanted to be incendiary, that...
Which you never want to do, by the way.
No. That a Tennessee defense could be taken aback by a running quarterback and a quarterback that they haven't seen a lot. But they've done well against running quarterbacks for the most part. And the Wimsatt kid has played not extensively. He played extensively against Auburn, but he's gotten a series in almost every game this year. It doesn't matter which direction they go because they're both just bad. And I know that Will Levis was way overhyped. He's not a very good NFL quarterback. And I agree with you. I don't think he ever will be, Caleb. But still, a Will Levis at Kentucky is a big deal for the Cats, just like a Jared Lorenzen or a Tim Couch was. It elevates your entire team. To be a team that has to play other teams that are more talented and to not have competent quarterback play, that's a bad mixture.
Oh, it's a terrible mixture. It is a terrible mixture. And now, by the way, there's levels of this. I would take Jared Lorenzen and Tim Couch significantly over Will Levis. And to this day, I don't know how Jared Lorenzen didn't get drafted, but Will Levis got drafted in the second round. But hey, that's just my rant. But
no, I would take both of those. I don't think it's close. Lorenzen had a weight issue. I mean, that was, unfortunately, rest his soul. I mean, that was a factor, just like a drug issue would have been. Is right. Part of the reason why he wasn't drafted.
Yeah. So, but I agree. And here's the worst part for this, Dave. And it's funny you bring it up. You and I have watched plenty of football. How many times have you seen, and I've seen it 1,000 times, where a team brings in a backup quarterback because the other quarterback's injured or something like that happens, and the team that they're playing that's heavily favored because they hadn't prepared for the backup quarterback gets upset or almost upset in that first game, and the backup quarterback has the game of his life and everybody's excited. You've seen that happen 1,000 times, right?
Oh, yeah. And particularly at the NFL, you'll see a guy have a good, game and a half, maybe even 2 games before people figure him out. I don't think these guys need to be figured out.
No, exactly. Well, that's where I'm getting at. It's twofold. One, we saw Gavin Wimsatt come in last week. It didn't matter that Auburn wasn't ready for him. He was still horrible. And most notably, what happened, Dave? They just gave Tennessee a whole half of film to study Gavin Wimsatt for a week. So, yeah. I mean, that's and the third part is, how does this affect the team in practice? So one of the things that happens is when a star quarterback goes down or a star player goes down, and by the way, I've always said, I think this is the reason Tennessee won the 98 national title. When stars go down a lot of times or leave, like Peyton Manning leaves, a lot of players who are really good, they may have slacked off a little bit at certain times the previous year, but they kind of realize, oh, we got to actually step up a little bit because we got to carry the weight that's missing. We got to carry this backup. That helps a lot. But if you were Kentucky and you're a teammate of Gavin Wimsatt and you saw him play last week, are you really going to find yourself wanting to practice that hard this week for this kid with the way he played?
Well, I don't think I'm not going to question their practice habits.
I know what I mean, though. They're not going to have the psychological mentality that people oftentimes have with backups of, oh, we need to pull more weight more than we typically do.
I totally appreciate where you're coming from, but the bottom line is they're just bad quarterbacks.
Yes, they are. But what I'm saying is also they're not going to get the extra help from players. Okay, the 98 team, Dave, the Georgia game when Tennessee blew out Georgia. Why did they blow out Georgia? What happened? Jamal Lewis went down with a season-ending injury. You and I both know every single player on that team was like, oh, I got to play a little bit harder this week because there's no Jamal Lewis.
True. I'm just saying, I think that if you were a farmer, you've hoed your own field, and you're going to go over to the field next door and do a little bit of their work. I don't think you have to dive deep into psychological implications of Kentucky's quarterback situation. I just think they're darn bad.
Okay.
I mean, I appreciate you exploring it, and it's one of the things I like about you, but bad is bad.
I mean,
just bad. All right. What down's next, Scoop?
Cooper Mays here.
Dave's just
Second down.
mean.
I'm just mean. Am I mean to you or am I mean to Kentucky's quarterbacks?
Oh, both.
Okay. Quarterbacking isn't the only issue. Back on the Cats, Kentucky has just been bad all around on offense. They haven't scored 20 points against an SEC opponent this season. Kentucky is on a 3-game losing streak. Tennessee has held all of its opponents to 19 points or less. Looks like a mismatch to me, kids, and it is. And when you look deeper into the stats, Kentucky dead last in scoring offense with 19 points per game. Those are not just SEC numbers. Those are non-conference numbers, too. The last I threw at you. Last in touchdowns scored with 17 this season, 15th in yards per game with 308 yards per contest, and 15th in yards per play with 4.9 yards gained per snap. That is absolutely horrendous. I mean, you have to have at least the conversation that this Kentucky team, as bad as they've been, could be one of the worst Kentucky teams we've actually seen in person. And I've seen some bad ones.
Dave.
Now, part of that's injuries. Go ahead.
They just play good, tough physical defense, and they like good, tough physical football games. Okay,
That's exactly what it is.
You don't pretend you haven't heard coaches say that when their offenses are trash. Have
Yes.
you not?
Yes. No, I've definitely heard that.
They're like, it's a good, tough defensive game. It's like, no, your offenses just sucked, bro. And so that's I'm with you. That is Kentucky. They are absolutely terrible all the way around, and they don't really have any options at this point. I mean, I don't see how against this Tennessee defense, I'm having a problem seeing how they can do anything. And I just wanted to bring up this stat, Dave, real quick. It's not the stat of the day, but it's an interesting one that I should mention. Tennessee is number one in the SEC in league play in plays that they have in havoc plays and pressure plays. There is a havoc stat now, basically, which is basically when a player
this started with a yak, yards after catch, and then it just stewed for a while, and we had the yards after catch or rack, reception after catch, or whatever the hell you want to call it. But now we've got edge, and it's just there. I honestly had to text Bill Martin, the Tennessee Sports Information Director, to find out what a stop was, a hard stop. Yeah, a hard stop is the opposing team didn't score on that drive. That's all it is.
But Dave, that's yes, that is a hard.
That's all it is. It's a non-scoring drive.
But there's also line yards per rush and things like that.
Oh Lord!
So, right, but the havoc play is important because this is the thing. Basically, it's do you get multiple players past the line of scrimmage within a certain amount of seconds on a play?
Okay.
Tennessee does that 25% of the time, which is an insane stat because they're actually doing it a lot on run plays too, and as well on stat plays, on pass plays. Their pressure rate is 31%. Dang, that's an insane stat that they're getting pressure on 31% of plays.
Okay, I agree with that. But couldn't we just illustrate that point with tackles for a loss and sacks?
No, you can't because tackles for a loss and sacks are glorified stats.
Yes, well, I don't know what havoc wasn't even a stat 4 days ago.
It's like basically a sack or tackle for a loss is like this is a great example, but it's kind of like a triple in baseball. A triple's not necessarily like because of you doing something special. Like you usually reach it if you hit a triple, there was some luck involved in how you hit the ball and how it bounced. A double's legit.
Disagree. You're telling me every time James Pierce gets a sack, he got lucky.
I'm saying that actually it's partially luck, but it's always him getting the pressure. The pressure is the skill. And then with you bringing enough pressure, getting a sack is like getting a hit in baseball. Put it that way.
Okay.
Like if you do everything right, that's fine. You still have to get lucky to get on base because you only do it like 30% of the time.
Fair. You're just not going to convince me to like a new Havoc stat.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Tennessee has seen this defense before. Now, this defense led by Mark Stoops, if this game were in September, it would be a little scary. Partly because Kentucky has 12 players out due to injury, but also because Mark Stoops is a very good defensive-minded coach. Would you agree with that, Caleb?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Okay. So he could dial up something, and it may be the three-man front, and he may do it this week. But he dialed up what ultimately beat Ole Miss, and you would agree that that offense is similar. They're not the same, Caleb, but Tennessee has seen the best of Mark Stoops' defense against an up-tempo offense, which really Tennessee isn't anymore. So, Caleb, I don't think there's anything that Stoops can dial up defensively to suddenly scare the Vols.
No, I don't think so either. And honestly, part of that is, Dave, I think you and I both know this. Stoops is not that creative to begin with defensively.
No, pretty much. I mean, his teams, when they're at their best, they play physical. They're not exotic or creative. I mean, that's exactly what they are. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Hang tight for 30 seconds. I'll have my fourth reason why Tennessee is going to thump the Cats and a prediction. As also somebody said on our YouTube message board that I talk too professional and they'd like it more if I just spoke like I'm speaking to friends and family. Caleb, do I talk much different on the show?
Not from what I've noticed.
Thank you.
That doesn't make much sense at all.
Maybe
Y'all think Dave's professional?
Yes, maybe I just have golden tones. 30 seconds brought to you by Banks & Jones, who brings you and represents the golden tones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. All right, Caleb, give us an update on the poll question before I give you fourth down and the fourth reason why Tennessee's going to thump the Cats, and then I'll give you my score prediction.
Okay, well, do you want me to tease it, or am I allowed to give the full thing?
Well, I mean, I would have liked that before the break there, but I knew that you wouldn't do it, so I just went ahead and fired it.
Okay, fair enough. Guys, just you really disappoint a hooker when you don't tease them first. So,
wow, or you don't pay them.
That's true. All right, so Vols will beat Kentucky by
Caleb
0.
told me that. I didn't know that. Go ahead.
They will beat Kentucky by 0 to 10, 12%, 11 to 20, 47%, more than 20, 37%. So 84% is saying by more than 10 points. But Dave, 4% say Kentucky will upset the Vols. That's right. 4% are on our show right now telling us Kentucky's going to win.
Okay. Now, here's reason number 4 why Tennessee's going to thump the Cats.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
I don't believe in history for the most part, but it's 35 of the last 38 games. Okay? And Caleb, you're a gambling guy, and you can break down the X's and O's with the best of them. But at some point, the best gamblers have told me history tends to repeat itself. And it's repeated itself in the Tennessee-Florida series. Kentucky just doesn't play their best game against Tennessee. There were arguments for that previously, that they're beat down at the end of the season, and that may all be true. Now, in fairness to Kentucky, this is their Super Bowl. Okay, if they win this game, Caleb, then Mark Stoops probably keeps his job. If they don't, he could still keep his job, but I don't think so, based off sources I talked to in Lexington. So my final prediction, 35-11. I wanted 35-10, but I was doing John Pennington's pregame sports source show, and everybody picked 35-10. So I picked 35-11. So I believe that Kentucky will either blow a extra point or will go for 2 to try to cut into the Vols' lead and then kick a couple of field goals. 35-11. That's my score. Take it.
I don't disagree with you on history, by the way. I'm with you. But yeah, there's exceptions you make, and this is one of those exceptions. And it's largely because, see, one of the things gamblers do, and this is one of the biggest annoying things, is they'll be like, well, you know, when the weather says this at this specific time, at this specific date, then this team covers every time. As if, like, that's like...
I have to be honest with you. Your voice is getting so out there, it's almost unintelligible.
Well, I'm trying to make fun of make someone sound unintelligent.
Okay, well, it works.
At that moment. So I don't like when people create patterns that aren't there. What is it? Correlation without causation? That is the most annoying thing that people do. And would you agree people do it in sports more than anything else?
Yes.
And yeah, it drives me insane. Well, I will say, though, the pattern with Kentucky makes sense. And you're right. There's a psychological aspect. There's a campus culture problem.
Okay, what about the argument? Let me ask you, campus culture in that they feel the pressure.
They feel the pressure.
Tennessee. The same way Tennessee's players did in the height of the Florida series. So I agree with that. I think that is definitely a factor. Not as much as it was, because I don't think anybody goes to class anymore. But I do think it's a factor, and you hear from friends and family, like, oh, it should certainly be a big win if you beat Kentucky. Now I'm doing voices.
I got Dave on it.
Yeah, but I'll take you a step further. I don't like necessarily the history thing, but let's remember this. With NIL, you can do what to your roster? You can bolster your roster, right? Gerald Mincey, prime example. Maybe horrible, but prime example. So, but Kentucky can't do it to the same level as a Tennessee, Alabama, Florida. Well, I don't know about Alabama, but the good NIL schools. They can't do it to the same level. So the old, yes, you play them at the end of the year and they're beat up, still applies to Kentucky and Vanderbilt because they don't have as much money to spend to bolster their roster. So it's a different sort of argument, but I'll still say this. You'd rather play both of these teams at the end of the year, especially this year. Kentucky has 12 players that are out in this game, Caleb. They're beat all the bejesus.
They are. I mean, they're totally banged up, which you're right, makes it much, much worse for them. I mean, this was a factor, by the way, back. You can bring it up back to the 90s. Hey, this is why Tennessee always had that streak against Kentucky. You're right. I mean, when Kentucky, like during the Tim Couch years, like you would think like a team even as bad as Kentucky or Vanderbilt would sneak one on Tennessee in the 90s and the 2000s. But the reason they never did was specifically because it was at the end of the year. So Tennessee, I mean, they didn't even have the talent. I mean, they weren't even deep enough to overcome being so outmatched. And the only reason Vanderbilt kept it close sometimes was because Tennessee literally did not game prep for Vanderbilt during those days. But you're right.
Before they were recruiting.
Yeah, Tennessee was recruiting. But you're right. Kentucky, they're banged up at the start of November, and they are wrecked. And again, it's also just, I don't see any possible way that Tennessee, I said this with Arkansas, but the other thing that you missed, and this wasn't one of your keys, Dave, Tennessee's at home.
Well, yeah, that to me, but look at this injury report. I mean, goodness gracious. You talk about beat up. I mean, we haven't seen an injury report like this because this is the first year that they've done it. But, I mean, look at the out. I mean, that's a lot of dudes out. Whereas I scroll down, and I want to make one note that is very important that nobody's talked about because they don't have the insight that we do. And that is William Satterwhite going from probable to questionable is a big deal. And it's a big deal because he's just a freshman, but I've heard multiple reports from practice that the guy's the real deal. I'm not saying that he's pushing for Cooper's job, but if something were to happen, you're not going to have a catastrophe like happened last year, Caleb, when they didn't have a center that could physically step up and do what Cooper does. I'm not saying he's as physically good as Cooper, and I'm certainly not going to even imply that he can handle the line calls and that he's as fundamentally sound and all that stuff. But I will tell you, if something were to happen to Cooper and he had to go out for a couple of plays, William Satterwhite is not going to tank out, and you should be very excited about his future. We didn't have time to go into that as a full topic, but William Satterwhite, and I believe Larry Johnson, the third, second Esquire Junior, Senior, is going to prove us wrong in our critiques of Josh Heupel's talent evaluation on the offensive line and or Glenn Ellerby's production of talent there.
Look, I mean, I'm not going to say he's proven me wrong. I'm saying it's just a concern right now. He will alleviate the concern.
I have the same concern. I just think in a year from now, that will be alleviated by those two guys in particular, and to some extent, Shamu Murrell.
Yeah, no, okay. I could see that. And the offensive line does take a little bit longer to figure out. I think Josh Heupel was so all in for 2024. That's why he went ahead and was like, I got to go buy a tackle real quick to help this out. But you do have a good point. And I think that Tennessee is going to Tennessee is going to start to be able to use more offensive linemen in a rotation, maybe as November stretch run continues.
Yep. All right. Now, I want to tell you why Tennessee's newest commitment is more than just a 3-star linebacker. Okay. So what has Tennessee had to do in recruiting to compete with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world? They've had to evaluate early. They've had to build relationships. They've had to offer scholarships in some cases too early. But this is where Tennessee is now, and it's way different from where they've been. They can say to a young man, and that young man who flipped his commitment from Wisconsin to Tennessee loves the Vols. And we're talking about 3-star linebacker Brendan Ains. Here was the knock on him when I was told over the summer, he's not big enough right now. Well, now his high school coach says he's 6'2.5", or 6'3" possibly, which probably means he's 6'1.5". But nevertheless, I've watched the guy play. He's filled out his frame. He's done whatever needed to be done in the offseason to get ready for his senior year and turn himself from an okay prospect to a very good prospect. We call them nowhere, somewhere, anywhere guys. He was not a nowhere guy. He had a Wisconsin offer, and he probably would have had more had he not committed in June. He's certainly not an anywhere guy. He couldn't just call up Kirby Smart and say, hey, I'm coming, and Kirby say, hey, I've got a scholarship for you. But he is definitely a somewhere guy. And Tennessee is able to sit back and watch these guys develop and then flip them. And that is something that they were not able to do on a regular basis previously under Josh Heupel. I'm just going to tell you, I've covered recruiting for a long time. And I watched a lot of his tape last night when he flipped. There are a lot of in-state guys, too, that I want to address, led by Cooper Mays, who is supposed to be too small, not big enough, and all that, to be a top-flight SEC player. Well, he's a top-flight SEC player. I mean, he's an All-American center, potentially, this year. I think that you also, Caleb, and let's address your hatred of mid-state prospects. I think you also have to have this culture that bounces back from an Arkansas loss. I'm going to go back old school and an argument that I used to hate. And Fred White, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. It's not a shot. You're from Georgia. You love Tennessee more than anybody. But it's good to have a good in-state base that when things get tough, they keep that culture going. Your thoughts on Tennessee picking up a 2025 commitment in Ains?
Well, to your point real quick about in-state guys, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think we always talk about the biggest stars on the 98 team, but I think actually 70% of that team was from the state of Tennessee. And the leader of that team was Al Wilson for a specific reason. And guess what? Jeff Hall was a captain on that team, a kicker, because again, he was a big Vol guy. So that's a great point. And you can tell this is a guy who would have wanted to go to Tennessee all along, but Tennessee waited, and then they flipped him. I think this is the type of guy, you're right, that Tennessee needs more of, because what they're really looking for with their linebackers right now are guys that have enough lateral quickness and enough intelligence to be able to stay in position against these defenses. Those two things together are key. Elijah Herring had the intelligence and he had the heart, but he didn't have the lateral quickness. So,
Agreed.
I mean, you know, it's...
And so far, Jeremiah Thielander and Keenan Pili have both surprised us with their ability to play sideline to sideline. I didn't know that Pili was going to be that good. And so far, I think Thielander's done a good job as he continues to get his feet wet.
Oh, I agree. So the question with this kid, because he was a Wisconsin commitment, and we know the Big 12 allows you to, not the Big 12, you're allowed to not have lateral quickness when playing in the Big 10. Is that fair to say, Dave?
It's very fair to say.
Yeah, and Wisconsin doesn't look for that. They look for the gym rat guys, the good, solid, fundamental guys that, you know, are going to stay in their right positions. And yeah, that's what they're looking for. Does he have the lateral quickness? Because again, Elijah Herring, also came from Nashville, did not have the lateral quickness. And you really don't know that until you see them in SEC play. So that's going to be the biggest question for Brendan Haynes as he heads to Tennessee next year. I think Tennessee has like his development. So but we will have to see how that goes. That's going to be hard. That's going to be the hardest thing to gauge is his lateral quickness.
Let me interrupt for a second. I thought Elijah Herring, when he signed with Tennessee, was a big guy that was limited laterally, and probably back in the day, they would have made him a defensive end. Okay, but he probably didn't want to do that, and they don't make moves like that like they used to, because the transfer portal, you can just up and bolt. I think this guy is a guy that has all the athletic ability that you need, much like a Thielander or a Pili. He's just got to stay big. He's just got to keep drinking the protein shakes. I love the protein, as the bros like to say in the gym. So, Caleb, I think comparing him to Herring is a little bit unfair.
That's fair. And also, his coach actually said that he's used as a bit more of a speed set the edge guy, which is a good sign for Tennessee then, because if you're a speed set the edge guy, then we're talking his lateral quickness may not be a concern at all. As a matter of fact, he's used more as in a role that could actually have him play Mike linebacker at Tennessee, which is crazy to think.
I've been told that he is projected to play Mike.
He is projected to play Mike? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the question then becomes, can he whip blocks from, you know what I mean? Because you know this game, Mike linebackers, you got to whip a lot of interior blocking to make plays in the run game.
Totally agree. Do me a quick favor. I'm going to check what Thielander is listed at right now on Tennessee's football roster. And can you check and see how big he was when he came to Tennessee? And give us 30 seconds so we can tell you about our friends at Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
Thielander listed at 6'2", 238 pounds. Wowzers. When I found it, in case you didn't, Tennessee signed him 6'2", 217 pounds. I think these guys are clones.
Wow, you think they're clones?
Yes. Now, Thielander was from Georgia, so we could argue whether or not you'd want an in-state guy or you'd want to beat Georgia, but I don't think that Georgia truly offered him. Here's the other thing I want to give you a little bit of insight on, Caleb, because I've covered more recruiting than you can possibly ever imagine, is when a guy commits to Wisconsin, especially with the early signing day, these recruiting analysts are moving on. So they're not going to give out another star unless another school offers, unless there's some sort of news to be had. So I have no issue with him being a 3-star. By the way, just for frame of reference, T-Lander was listed as the 53rd best linebacker in the nation. Now, where do you think Ains was listed? 61st.
So we're talking, I mean, they are like very, very closely tied.
Yep. I think
But
they got
Dave-
another T-Lander. I don't think you expect anything from him next year. But in 2026, you expect him to be ready to roll, especially because he's put on that weight in this offseason. I think it's a big
And all
deal.
signs, I mean, look, all signs point to that, and you are right about that. And you're right. He's 6'2", so he has the right size. Again, he's used as the speed guy at his high school, which is a big deal. He's used to come off the edge sometimes, funny enough. The big question becomes, and this is always hard, Dave, can you maintain your lateral quickness when you put on that weight?
That's true.
And so because he's going to have to get to what, 240? Because he's going to play, if he's going to play Mike linebacker, he's got to get to 240, right?
Yeah, 235. I would argue this, that I would much rather be in this position than with a Herring that already had the size and I didn't think had the quickness.
Hype will sign Herring as like his first, like I think it was like his first ever recruit that he signed. And it's like, or one of his first evers. He just didn't have, he had to get guys. I mean, this was when he took over 21. He had to go get guys pretty much. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he had to get bodies.
Yeah. And also, I also, as I said before, I think there's something to be said for having a presence in Nashville. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be great there, but I think they want to continue to do that. And the last thing you want is to let another Patrick Willis slip through the cracks. Remember when Tennessee didn't offer him, and he's gone on to be an NFL Hall of Famer. Oops.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. And I think even crazier was that Patrick Willis, you would think, given the success that Tennessee had with Al Wilson and Jackson, Huntington area prospects, you would have thought they'd have gone after Patrick Willis a little harder. But
no, they didn't just not go after him.
They didn't want him. Yeah,
they told him he wasn't fast enough. You can just step off and go to Ole Miss.
Well, I heard that he actually cried on his way home from a camp because he really wanted to go to Tennessee his whole life.
Yes,
and he was like crying because he was so sad that Tennessee didn't want him, and he had to be consoled about it. And,
yes.
You know, it was but I mean, look, you're going to miss some guys. There are some guys that you can't project, right? I mean, but Patrick Willis, was there even anybody on the staff that thought he was good?
Everybody but John Chavis.
Really? Everybody thought he was good with John Chavis?
Not even John Chavis.
Yeah, you're kidding. I thought nobody. I mean, he went to Ole Miss. It wasn't like he got offers to like Georgia or Florida or Alabama or like elite programs.
Well, I'll be clear. I think that the fact that he was in state played into it too. Everybody wanted him but John Chavis.
That's wild. So this was a John Chavis miss.
So a miss. I mean, it's one thing to miss in a guy that goes and plays 3 or 4 years in the NFL. It's another thing to miss in a guy that's in Canton, Ohio.
John Chavis still hasn't prepared for how to stop a quarterback draw, Dave. He was so focused on learning to teach guys to close gaps to stop a quarterback draw that he missed on evaluating Patrick Willis. Because it's a very complex thing, Dave. It's a very complex thing to learn how to stop a quarterback
who
draw.
could have stopped a quarterback draw in that 2001 SEC championship game. How about Patrick freaking Willis?
Or how about this? You know what Patrick Willis would have done more than anything? 2006
Tennessee win.
When Tennessee gives up the 4th and 1 to Tim Tebow in 2006, you know who would have stopped Tim Tebow and who was playing college football at that time? Patrick Willis. And by the way, they didn't even they dropped back in coverage on that play. Go back and look at it. Tennessee drops back in coverage. What do you think Tebow's in there to do?
Stat of the day coming up, which basically says if you lose to Kentucky, you get fired. I didn't think that's the case this year, but statistically, it's proven to be the case. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. banksandjones.com. Stat of the day coming up, Ollie Lane, former ball center as well. More after this, and I remind you that Medicare Misty, wherever you're watching, is registered and licensed, I should say, in over 40 states. She can take care of you. More in just a sec.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Matt posted, we got a 26 four-star wide receiver. Yes, we wrote about that and talked about that because that happened during the show on yesterday's program. And Caleb, you wrote about it later in the day. We got to get rolling with Ollie Lane coming on, but give us your encapsulation of how big of a pickup that was for Tennessee.
Definitely a huge pickup in the slot. He's the guy that you're going to want that really, really stretches the field. So Tennessee's going to keep going for those 5'10", 5'11" speedsters that are a vertical threat. They're having issues with that this year because Squirrel White's banged up, but I do think overall he's a really big pickup. And for my trashing of Nashville guys, again, I say just take off half a star for Nashville guys. For Knoxville guys, add half a star. Every single Knoxville kid that has ever played at Tennessee has played half a star better than their rating.
I'm pretty close to that with Chattanooga as well.
Oh, Chattanooga, yeah, 100%. And by the way, the biggest one, the Tri-Cities area, Johnson City, East Tennessee up there, like where Jason Witten's from, like those kids always, I mean, you might as well add a full star on for those kids.
We need to get Jason on the program sometime. All right, so go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Definitely click the thumbs up if you would like to hear from Jason Witten at some point during the program. And go ahead and tell me if I'm crazy on the message board by this is a very underrated get by Tennessee. It is time for the stat of the day, and it is not great for a lot of coaches. What is the stat of the day? Well, Caleb, why are you smiling? I mean, you're talking about people getting fired and losing their jobs, and it's just all right. Stat of the day. What do we got? And it's brought to you. Yes, go ahead.
One of the people I'm going to name, Dave, you hate him more than I do because I've always felt bad for him, and I actually rooted really hard for him because I don't
hate anybody in my heart. So Well,
That's a lie.
Maybe one or two people. But the stat of the day is brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
Fifth year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
All right, stat of the day, and we'll turn it into a poll question. By the way, Vols will beat Kentucky by 0 to 10, 9%, 11 to 20, 43%, more than 20, 45%. Kentucky will upset the Vols, 4%. All right. What do you got?
The last 3 coaches to lose to Kentucky were all fired within a year.
Now, if something happens, that's not going to happen this year.
Derek Dooley
You're
lost
not
to
ruling
Kentucky.
it out.
I mean, by the way, I will say this. I could actually go back to, I can go further than that. Bill Battle also. For the last 5 coaches at Tennessee to lose to Kentucky were fired within the year. The only one who wasn't was Johnny Majors in 1984. But Bill Battle lost to Kentucky in 76 and was literally fired 2 weeks later for Johnny Majors. Bill Battle was fired in October of that year because Tennessee was going to go after Johnny Majors no matter what.
I guess it's before I was born. All right, okay, so what are the 3 coaches that lost to Kentucky and were fired within a calendar year or later that year?
Within 365 days. Derek Dooley lost to Kentucky in 2011. And for those who don't remember, then went dark and disappeared for 3 months. And kind of in an interview later was like, I didn't realize how big of a deal it was that I lost to Kentucky. He was shocked at how upset Tennessee fans were that he lost to Kentucky. That happened in 2011. In 2017, Butch Jones lost to Kentucky as the season was unraveling. I remember Tennessee fans rooting for Kentucky in that game. I remember Tennessee fans actively betting on and rooting for Tennessee to fail to cover every week because they were so done with Butch Jones. They wanted him fired. And then in 2020, Tennessee had 5 turnovers in the first half and fell to Kentucky in a pretty bad blowout. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for Jeremy Pruitt, funny enough. But yeah, the 2011 one was the one, Dave, in case you forgot, where Kentucky put a receiver at quarterback and won 10-7 because they didn't have a quarterback on the roster. And they beat Derek Dooley 10-7. Dave Hart came out later that year and said, no staff member is safe. I'm not renewing anybody's contract. So what the hell do you think was going to happen?
You might
as well fire a coach right then, right?
Might as well just go club them, Nancy Kerrigan style. Just tell them it's not going to work out. Too bad. All right, so the last 3 coaches that have lost to Kentucky have been fired within a calendar year. It's not going to happen this year, but just a real quick one. If Josh Heupel somehow lost to Kentucky and didn't make the college football playoff because of it, how many people would question whether or not he is the right guy for the job? You would?
Yes.
Okay, I think about 20 to 30% would. I think it would be a significant amount. So you can't lose this game. You just can't. What you need to do, though, what you can do at any point in time is go check out our friends at Work Trucks. Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Truck saves you time, less back and forth trips, and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is quick and easy. When choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks, Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you, contractors. Get you on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks. That's a fact. Service industry, Work Trucks. Downtown Birmingham, Clinton Highway in Knoxville, worktrucksllc.com. The entire inventory is there. They'll find a perfect truck, outfit it, make sure it fits your needs to a T. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. And it is time for what the H, as we'll get that in right before we get to Ollie Lane, the former Tennessee center, who is just absolutely throwing heat. And we'll ask him if Lance Hurd is still a slow-moving man. All right, here we go. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, Caleb, this is your baby, so roll with it. Apparently, Nico likes to be beat around a little bit.
He's into BDSM.
Yeah, what can you tell me about Nico and what his coach said about getting him hit? Because I felt like we were all watching on eggshells early in the season. It's like he's still skinny. He can't get hit. You can't let anybody hit him because he could break in half. He's like a porcelain doll. But no, his high school coach said that's not the case.
Yeah, so Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel joined the Tony Basilio show last week and said that he had recently spoke with Nico Iamaleava's high school coach. And the coach told Sparks that contact early always made Iamaleava play better. Basically saying that Nico loved to run over people in the open field. And he loved to lower his shoulder. And basically, at that point, his dad, who was coaching at the time, his family would like flex and chest bump, and he would get really hyped. And they would say that at that point, Nico would just start balling and get into a rhythm. So basically what the high school coach was saying is Nico needs to get hit a little bit more early to get excited. Now, I read into that. I'm like, so should there, and I'll ask you, Dave, should Josh Heupel call some designed runs for Nico, maybe on the first drive, just to let him get hit a couple of times and get rolling?
I think he should call design runs for Nico and plays in which he could receive contact because it makes this offense the best it can be. You can't look at Nico and think he's skinny and I'm scared because nobody has a backup anymore because the transfer portal. You can't play football like that. If you look at the sprint out, had that not been such a well-timed play, the one where he threw the pass down the sideline, it was Brazel, right? The 55-yarder? Okay.
No, the 55-yarder was Thornton, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Had that not been called at the right time, he could have been hit. So, and there are other times in the RPO game where he could get hit. So I think that's an important part of the offense, Caleb. I don't think it necessarily you do so because it might make Nico get into the game more. I just think they've been a little bit conservative with that in general.
Oh, I think so too. I think they've been very conservative with it. And, there is a lot of, don't get me wrong, quarterbacks are taught to protect themselves and things like that. They're the most vulnerable player on the field. I think we can agree with that. But I do think, and I think you could agree with me on this, Dave, right? Isn't it very important for a quarterback to get hit early to get in somewhat rhythm? Just so you guys know, like, for instance, the quarterback that was notorious for protecting himself the most, Peyton Manning, in 2012, when he was coming back off his neck injury, Dave, I don't know if you know the story. He went to John Fox and he was like, I want to start every preseason game. I got to get hit some. He basically said, I'm not going to be able to go for the season unless I get hit and I feel it. And it worked. Another example I can give you guys is RG3 after that horrible leg injury that wrecked him in the playoffs. He was trying to come back the next year. I think you know the story. He wanted to try to be Peyton Manning, which was stupid because he needs to use his legs. But one area where Mike Shanahan was wrong and he messed up RG3, he held RG3 out of all of preseason that year. And it was like, I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want him to get tweaked. And even RG3 was like, I got to get hit a little bit. Like, you have to get hit some as the quarterback just so you can settle into what you're doing. And if you're never hit and you're trying to protect yourself, you're going to play the whole time nervous about getting hit. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you got to get hit some as a quarterback. And so I'm with you. I think have a designed run and also have it where like Nico goes out and he can, run over a safety or something like that. For the record, by the way, we always forget this. Hendon Hooker a lot of times got his offense going because he had a great run early. And that's how he would get going.
I think it sounds good for the coach to say that, but isn't that most football players. Was it against Alabama where Hendon Hooker got so fired up on the goal line where he took a hit and possibly got kind of pushed into the ground? I can't remember the game.
No, Florida.
It's Florida. I mean, aren't most quarterbacks like that? I mean, I'm sure Peyton Manning would like to sit back in a perfect pocket and throw and pick people apart, but probably the same for Tom Brady. But don't you think that most quarterbacks like a little bit of contact to kind of get in the flow of the game?
I think most quarterbacks need it, and Manning and Brady needed it at least within the season, but they could go into a game and just spend the whole game protecting themselves from getting hit. I think most quarterbacks, though, do need, and Nico does seem this way, they need to get hit in the game. Does that make sense? With Manning and Brady, they just need to get hit in the season at some point, but they're going to protect themselves during the game. But I think Nico needs to get hit in the game to really get going. And I think that also, I mean, look, if confidence is Nico's issue, Dave, well, I mean, let's just call it what it is. The biggest confidence booster is getting hit. That helps you a lot more than a lot of other things. So, I think getting hit is one of the biggest things for Nico that is going to be really helpful for him going forward.
Agreed. What the H brought to you by Medicare Misty, again, licensed into over 40 states. It's open enrollment. She can take care of your Medicare needs at no cost to you.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Hey, let's do this. We're a couple of minutes early, but he's there and he's waiting for us. So let's bring Ollie Lane in on this discussion. Ollie, how are you, sir? Former Tennessee center. I kind of surprised you there, didn't I?
Yeah, a little bit, but I'm ready to be in here, excited. So yeah, let's get it going.
Okay, quarterbacks getting hit. We were just talking about Nico's high school coach said that Nico likes to get hit because it gets him into the flow of the game. That to me seems like that's probably more commonplace than not. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously different positions for sure, but for me, like I had to obviously get that first hit before I was comfortable in any type of game. But I mean, even now for like how the quarterback position has changed over the years, I heard you guys talking before, like the Peyton Mannings and the Tom Brady's, they probably didn't need to get hit because they're pocket passers. They would sit back there. They wanted protection. If they didn't get touched, it'd be okay for the whole day. That's what they wanted. But I feel like with some of these guys, especially the more aggressive runners and scramblers, especially the ones that want to get the most out of every yard, they want to get hit to just kind of get a gauge of, I wonder of like how much they could really push extra yardage. Is this a slide game? Is this I could run over a couple guys, make some plays? And I'm sure that's like part of the reason why his coach probably said this. Like that's a feeling out process for him at the beginning of the game. How hard are they hitting me? Do I need to slide this game? Can I make some extra plays, make extra yards on stuff? So I'm sure that's probably plays into it.
Yeah, and the other thing is too is yes, he looks a little slim, and he's probably going to put on more weight. But he's still, from what I've been told, and you could probably give me some input on this, he's still a very strong athlete. He's still 6'6", so it's not like he's a little midget running around out there.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, if you want to look at size comparisons, I mean, obviously comparing him to Joe, he's not the same size. But then, I mean, if you compare Hendon to Joe, they're not the same size. Hendon was a little bit smaller. Now he was older, beefed up a little bit more, and I'm sure Nico's going to get to that point. It's just part of that, just as you get into college, you get to that there's actual people dedicated solely to just developing his body, what his peak performance really looks like.
Caleb corrected me there on our little chat that we have so that it doesn't interrupt you. It's small. I think it's small people now. Is that what
small people? You can't say the M word. That's kind of
I can't say the M word. I mean, we've got to go M word now. I can't say the F word for fat people, and I am a fat person.
I mean, I wouldn't
guys,
say
not,
you're a
just,
fat person.
I don't know.
I
if that is like as much of a slur. It's like, but you can't say that word, okay?
Okay, I didn't know. I didn't mean
No,
to offend anybody. I actually watched the documentary "Am I Racist?" Last night. I did see Ollie though, and it was good to see you. I'm sorry I didn't stay longer, but John Pennington when he's taping scares me.
yeah, no, I enjoy it though. He's a great guy to work with. So
no, I agree. Intense individual. But by the same token, it's an offensive line's job to keep the quarterback from getting hit. So is it incumbent upon Josh Heupel to call plays that will get Nico hit?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's more of a terms of who you're letting Nico get hit by. I mean, obviously, it's the offensive line jobs. We're not going to let a defensive lineman just tee off and let him hit Nico, or for that factor, a linebacker. Obviously, if he wants to get hit or feel what a hit is, we want it from a little DB body that's not going to affect him too much. And so, I mean, you set it up with scheme that way. It was a lot of it, especially when you look back at Hendon Hooker. There's a lot of those quarterback design runs where it would allow him to get out on the edge, because he could burn the first level defenders, and then he's just meeting the DB in the backfield somewhere on a one-on-one matchup, almost like a running back. Because, I mean, that's what you're trying to do with running backs, single them up on the corners, make them one-on-one situations with safety. So, I mean, when you can do that with a quarterback as well, that's ideal.
Caleb made an odd assertion earlier in the program. Ollie's appearance brought to you by Peak IV Hydration also brings you Jacob Warren each and every Monday. South Knoxville and Sevierville, live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate with your health with Peak IV Hydration. And you can order the patches online, so you don't have to actually be there. Caleb said earlier that maybe Lance Hurd was just letting guys come free earlier in the season so they could hit Nico.
Never said that, Ollie. Never said that.
He did not say that. All right. Hang tight. He is Ollie Lane. We're going to take 2 minutes, and we'll be back with Ollie, brought to you in part by Peak IV Hydration. Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vols collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Rivalry Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Rivalry Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Remind you that Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports And Dave said, hello. Ollie Lane, nice enough to join us on Fridays. The center of attention, I think, is what we should call your segment. What do you think about that? Or we could do On Guard with Ollie Lane.
Guard?
Yeah. Which did you prefer playing, center or guard?
I'd much rather play guard. I'm just full honest, open disclosure. I absolutely hated playing center. It was not a enjoyable time for me. I am not as mentally strong as Cooper Mays is in being able to handle all of the stuff on a daily basis that comes with playing center. Now, obviously, like I was able to do it at a good enough level to be successful, but it wasn't that it was an enjoyable process per se.
No, okay. Then it's On Guard with Ollie Lane. I like that. I think it's got a ring to it. I think it's sellable. We'll get it out there and pitch it. All right, coming up, the stat of the day, and also is Kentucky or Vanderbilt a bigger rivalry. But first, I want to just talk about playing Kentucky with their backs against the wall, because those can be some scary teams. And I think Tennessee faced a couple of those teams in Oklahoma as it's shaken out. And I know that was early in the season, but Arkansas too. Sam Pittman's on the hot seat. I just feel like there's a better chance that teams with their backs against the wall, not necessarily from a player's perspective, we'll get to that, but a coaching perspective, might pull out something crazy like a 3-3 look or something like that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think more and more as coaches get towards that desperation factor, they start pulling all the tricks out of the hat a little bit to try to get some success going. And especially where Kentucky's at right now. I mean, Mark Stoops still is a consistent putting together an elite defense every year. I mean, the defense over there is good. Obviously, not having like 6 key guys on their defense does not help them in keeping that elite status. But I mean, it's just without having any offense presence for them to supplement that defense, it's just really kind of falling apart for them. And I mean, looking back a month ago after they beat Ole Miss, you're thinking this is a team that's not given up yet. They've got a lot to look forward to this season after having a close game with Georgia and pulling off the upset. But now it's almost in they're in flight or flight mode. It seems like the last 3 weeks, it's like they're trying to put stuff out there, but nothing's working. And then just the adversity is just starting to discourage them more and more. And I think just from a coaching staff, it's becoming increasingly difficult for them to get that player-led motivation from them. Because I kind of heard a little bit in what he was talking about earlier this week in his press conference, saying that a lot of the leaders and stuff that they had are injured and out for the season. And so it's hard to kind of get that from the people that are playing. But I think it's just it's important for them to really hammer in on that next man up mentality to try to salvage whatever they got for the rest of the season and try to see if they can make it to a bowl game or not.
Ollie, what are the chances that, coach, like in Mark Stoops' situation doing that, is pulling a Lou Holtz? And I don't know how young or old you are. Dave hates Lou Holtz, by the way. But
just because Lou Holtz dog cussed me, do you know who Ollie? Do you know who Lou Holtz is?
Yes, I know who Lou Holtz is.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
But
did you know that he cursed me one time for going too long in an interview that I was not told to keep tight?
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Lou Holtz.
No, he just.
I can't imagine Lou Holtz doing that.
Oh yeah, he just laid into me. I mean, it was taking advantage, and it's just too much time, and it was
flying everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like your age at the time, so I mean, I felt really attacked. Yeah. All right, sorry, Kevin.
No, it's okay. So basically, Lou Holtz was known when he was at Notre Dame in the 80s, when he was like a national title contender every year. They could be playing William and Mary, and he would go on Tuesday to his podium for his press room, be like, I just don't know if we're good enough to beat this team. Dave does a better impression of Lou than I do, but like he would basically constantly be like, well, I don't know if we're good enough to beat them. They're really, really good at this and that. He would always do that. How much of that? I mean, obviously Tennessee's significantly better than Kentucky, but could Mark Stoops kind of be, I guess, the equivalent of like hustling in the sense of pretending that his team's not as good to maybe try to get Tennessee complacent?
Yeah, I mean, I think he might be downplaying it, but I mean, I think some of it too might I think it really is just coming from true frustration with where he's at right now. Cause, he talked about another scheduling of a late night game for his team that's already struggling and all the other factors that are going into it. So I don't know if it's much. I mean, obviously, Kentucky and Tennessee, it's always a highly rated contest because, I mean, Kentucky hates us and they're going to give us everything they got to try to win that football game and ruin whatever type of season that we are putting together. And so, I mean, he might be using that to fuel them up a little bit more, just to add more into it. But I really do. I think at some point in time, it's starting to become more of from a point of frustration than it is just downplaying all that's really kind of going on over there.
No, I'm with you, and I wonder how disheartening it would be to be a part of a team, and you were part of a team that had to make a quarterback change because Joe Milton got hurt. But just to be a part of a team where heading into November, you're not really sure who your quarterback should be.
Yeah. No, I mean, to be honest, I mean, that happened a lot in my early career with Coach Pruitt. I mean, I think it was like 2019, there was a stretch there where 3 or 4 different quarterbacks were playing a game. So, I mean, we really didn't know who was the guy that we're riding with, who should we all put our attention and focus and praise towards. And so, I mean, it gets difficult, especially from players, because you want to hype up one guy when he's doing good. And then you got the other guy that you're still wanting to keep positive, but then some guy goes out there and makes a mistake, and then you're wanting to, well, let's go with this guy. Then it hurts the other guy's confidence. So, I mean, it's almost like a double-edged sword. I mean, it's iron sharpens iron, but at the same time, that competition can kind of deter when it's a high-value position like quarterback.
Yeah, let's get. I don't want to be unfair to Lou Holtz, so let's go ahead and bring him in here. There he is. Mr. Peanut is Lou Holtz, and if you didn't know, he likes to smoke a corncob pipe right before games as well.
Yeah,
that's true. That's honest to goodness true.
Wait, I'm still not seeing. You haven't shared it yet, Dave?
Oh, I haven't. There you go. I think Ollie saw it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. Maybe I didn't see it. Sorry.
There he is,
Mr.
Peanut. There's your guy.
I just wanted to see it again.
There's your guy with Holtz. Yeah. With Kentucky too, I have this belief that you're better off playing them at the end of the year because they don't have the same depth. And I think the loss of Keenan Pili was heartbreaking, obviously, but you get a Jeremiah Thielander that steps in, and I think he's playing pretty well. Just your thoughts on the overall roster and how they would compare, maybe not the starters, but the second and third team guys.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's pretty cut and dry that the depth that Tennessee has been able to build, especially just defensively wise, is a lot deeper over there at Kentucky. Because, I mean, you're already seeing now that they're into their 2s and 3s over there. It's not a pretty sight. They're struggling to get good, consistent success out there. And so, I mean, when you look at the roster stacking up against each other, there's still playmakers on both sides. I mean, obviously, Kentucky's got a really stout D-line. Number 0, Walker, is a super good defensive lineman, gave me a lot of trouble last year. And so he's going to be a key guy to look at on Kentucky's defense. But, I mean, just looking at the scope of things, I mean, obviously, like you said, losing Pili was a big hit to the roster and the talent on that. But Thielander is also a super talented linebacker, and so is Arion Carter. They've done a good job of kind of stepping up and soaking up the rest of the responsibilities and then throwing in Caleb Perry, rotating in every now and then. And it again goes to the show the recruiting aspect of how much they put into building and having consistent rotations of quality players come in.
Ollie, we've talked a lot about Tennessee and Josh Heupel's offense, and if the 3-3-5 is like the silver bullet to slow this thing down. Kentucky doesn't technically run a 3-3-5, but they do run a 3-4 using a lot of nickel, which for all intents and purposes is a 3-3-5. So how is it? Is it just like a 3-3-5 scheme when you're facing them, or is it somewhat different? What are some things with Mark Stoops' defense that's unique?
I mean, somewhat it is to a point. I mean, obviously they're going to stick true to what they do. They like to run the big 4-eye D tackles to kind of get some of that inside penetration against the run game, and then let a kind of like a bigger linebacker body play the outside, contain a little bit, let their linebackers hover over the top. So I'm not sure. Obviously, it's easier for them to transition into one of those types of defenses, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see like maybe a touch of it. But for who Mark Stoops is and the kind of defensive coordinator he is, I don't foresee him being one of the guys to change and throw some super, super brand new stuff out there that he hasn't done all season. I think you might see a couple of new maybe blitz packages and stuff like that. But for the majority, I feel like it will be pretty cut and dry of what a Mark Stoops defense is, because he is a proud defensive coordinator into what his scheme is and believes that his scheme does work. So.
Well, and I would think the other side of that is maybe Cooper, maybe Nico, whoever was taken aback a little bit by seeing that 3-3 look as often as they did, but surely to goodness they're prepared for it now.
Yeah, no, at this point, I mean, I think every week you just got to throw in a little bit of that just to have it in the game plan in case someone goes to that. Wouldn't be a bad idea moving forward, and I'm sure that's something they're probably doing. Just kind of having that in their backpack of tools.
Caleb, anything else? I want to get Ollie's prediction on how this game shakes out. Anything else from you, sir?
Yeah, Ollie, just getting back to the backs against the wall real quick. I hate to bring back memories to you. I really do. But the bad memories. But y'all had a couple of rough losses in 2022 and 2023, one at South Carolina, one at Florida, in which case both teams' backs were against the wall. Did you find it that those teams stepped up their level of play because of their backs against the wall, or was it just were there just other issues that happened in those games?
I think it's probably a mix of both. And I mean, especially in those games that you highlighted, they were pretty high level, high intense, somewhat rivalry games. So, I mean, obviously they're going to bring it up. And I mean, when you look at 22 South Carolina, I think there was other factors going into that one that I won't discuss. But I mean, when you look, obviously Florida is always a tough opponent. And I don't know. You look at that 23 loss to them. It's in Gainesville. We haven't beat them in Gainesville for over 20 years. I mean, it is what it is. But at the same time, I mean, these teams that do have their backs against the wall and then the rivalry game comes up, they're going to juice themselves up to a high level of energy ready for these kind of games and throw out all the effort that they can. Because, I mean, especially like Kentucky at this point in time, this is for the rest of their season. I mean, this is one of those games that I think I saw something they'd either have to beat us or Texas to get to a bowl game at this point. And that's I'm sure for them, beating us is a little bit more probable than beating Texas.
Yep. Going back to the South Carolina game, I don't want to get into what happened the week before. But I do want to ask you this. As a player, do you think that South Carolina had an idea of your all signs? The Connor Stallions thing, have you heard that theory?
Yeah. I mean, all I'm going to say is their defensive line wore wristbands for 2 games, and it was the last 2 games of the season, us and Clemson. I mean, that's –
And by the way, that was the two of the most shocking upsets in the Shane Beamer era against college football playoff contenders.
Yeah, and I mean, looking back at it, you're on the road in the SEC and you score 38 points. That's a really good game. So I mean, it's just like something else was going on to allow them, because I mean, there's no way that Spencer Rattler going off for whatever many touchdowns he had, because I mean, then he couldn't do it the next year. So I mean,
he looked like Joe Montana that day. That's going way back.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Something smells a little fishy in the water. That's just me. So
I love me some Ollie Lane. This is becoming my new favorite segment. Ollie, have a great week. Give us your score prediction. How do you see this game shaking out, and what you would do to Connor Stallions if you met him in a dark alley?
Yeah, obviously, I feel like I've seen a similar matchup to this game play out back in 2019 when we played Kentucky up there. They were kind of in a situation where they had a lot of offensive struggles. They didn't actually have a quarterback. It was when Lynn Bowden was playing the quarterback for him as that kind of like wildcat the whole time. And so it was just like, it was one of those games where Kentucky tried to hold the ball the whole time, never let us get any time of possession, and just see if they could score enough and keep us off the field enough. And I'm sure that's probably going to be what their game plan is going into this one. Just try to hold the ball as much as they can. Don't allow us to possess it and control the game. But I think at the end of it, I'm going with about 24-10. I think it'll be a pretty solid win, but still some closeness maybe starting out in that first half. Maybe like a 3-quarter game, fourth quarter, you see the separation.
You mentioned that Wildcat thing. And listen, there's certainly reasons for a quarterback to be mobile, more in today's football than when I was your age. Okay, so I get that. But when the coach comes to you and say, all right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're struggling to move the football a little bit. So we're going to go to just a running quarterback, and we're going to see if he can make things happen. Do you as a team kind of say like Peyton Manning does? And
they're like, that is total bullshit.
That has to be the worst feeling, Ollie.
I could, but I just watched Texas A&M and Mike Elko do the same thing to LSU, and it seemed to pay off for them. So, and I mean, I was watching that whole game, and I was at some point in that second half, I was like, does LSU not understand? Does Brian Kelly not understand they're just running the football? I was like, I think he maybe stepped back for one pass and still ran it. I was like, hey, let's focus. He's running the ball. This quarterback is not coming in to throw the football. So I mean, I don't know. As a player, it's just like, all right, we're changing the game plan. Let's roll with it. So, I mean, I don't know. It seems like part of it is just like you're giving up on a whole other half of the football. I feel like as a wide receiver, I might have more issue with that than an offensive lineman. But
I agree with you completely. I see where you're coming from. It just to me is kind of smells of desperation a little bit when you get to that point. And this is going way back. Caleb will remember this. I saw James Banks almost pull off an upset against Georgia going way back when. Caleb remembers games that I covered better than I do. But he almost pulled an upset in Athens, and it was basically just running the football. Sometimes you have to be that way. Ollie, we greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend, sir. And it was good to see you yesterday, and we'll still do lunch, man.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate y'all.
Ollie Lane, how good is he? I mean, that was just, fantastic. I thought sometimes I think you can read into what someone's saying, a combatant on the field, and that's what Ollie Lane was. When he says that Mark Stoops is prideful, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but when he says he's prideful in what he does on defense, that can beget the fall. And pride can be stubborn too.
Yeah. What it kind of reminds me of, Dave, do you remember when now look, in general, the person I'm about to name ain't the brightest bulb in the box, period. But when Les Miles was at LSU, one of the reasons he got fired was LSU fans were so frustrated. He stuck with that power eye offense like for so long, and they were like, can't you like adapt? And he's like, nope, defense and running, that's how we're going to win. And they asked him to like adapt, and then he goes and hires Cam Cameron as offensive coordinator, which is just an extra middle finger to the LSU alumni when he does it. And then he gets fired after a 2-2 start. But you're right. I mean, some people take such pride in what they do, they don't want to change. That's not just that's with legendary coaches too. Just going to do a bit of history real quick. Tennessee football back in in the late 1940s, Neyland had 2 straight 500 seasons coming back from the war, and people thought the single wing was dead. And then he had a renaissance of it because of Hank Larcella and Doug Atkins on defense and things like that, and they won back-to-back national titles. But he refused when he became athletic director to hire anybody who did not run the single wing. And
Barry Switzer promised Troy Aikman that they were going to start throwing the ball around. Didn't. Troy Aikman broke his leg and then transferred to UCLA. So that was a situation in which people were overly stubborn. Now, we say that, but Tom Osborne at Nebraska was probably overly stubborn with the option game, but he had the perfect dudes to run it. So it may have been an antiquated offense even in the 90s, but man, he had Tommy Frazier and he had Amon Green.
Well, that's the thing. He tweaked it because he went and got fast. Like he went for speed for the first time. Nebraska always went for power and to run their option. And then in the 90s, Osborne was like, if I get a couple of fast guys to run this, I'll be unstoppable. Also, if I get some steroids. I mean, I'm not saying anything, but
Well, no, that may be true. He had an incredible walk-on system. But I will just
a great conditioning program.
I will tell you this. Listen, you could do that right now if you got the buy-in from enough prospects, and it wouldn't be easy, but you could run the option like Nebraska did. And with the way defenses are light now, they're lighter than they were before, you would have success.
Yeah, Georgia Tech tried that, though, and they never did better than 9-3. And they had Paul Johnson for about 12
No, I'm
years.
talking about programs like South Carolina, where if they're not cheating, they're lucky to win 6. I'm not talking about winning the national title. Let me make sure I think you could take a program from bad to pretty good. I think Kentucky, if they replace Mark Stoops, should consider something like that, because I don't think they're ever going to compete for a college football playoff.
I mean, you could just run the spread. You don't have to do it the way Florida did it, but you could run the spread option offense, even like do the Tom Osborne option, but keep your kids in shotgun.
Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. HempHouseChatWith2Ts.com. HempHouseChatWith2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. Also want to thank our friends at Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. Coming up, what's the bigger rivalry, Kentucky or Vanderbilt, or neither? I lean towards neither, but I want to get your take and I want to get Caleb's take, because it seems like everybody points to Tennessee and says, you're our rival. Not really. And based off what Nick Saban said, I kind of think it's just Alabama. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Update on our poll question. Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. And you want to be sure and join Hooker's Corner, as if you do so, you'll be eligible to win a Garmin worth over $1,000, just $9.98 a month, increased recruiting coverage, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. Again, you can win a Garmin worth over $1,000 thanks to Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Plus, and be sure and tell them that Off the Hook Sports and Dave Hooker sent you. Plus, you can win a monthly grand prize that I have in my hand right here, and we'll give away at the end of the show today. It's a mini helmet autographed by Dylan Sampson. It's pretty awesome. We'll be giving that away at the end of the program today. So if you want to go ahead and sign up like now, then you'll be included in the drawing. You can click on that QR code, and it's just $9.98 a month. And I think you'll be really excited about what we've got going on there, the increased recruiting coverage and more. Caleb, let's get to this day in Tennessee sports history. What is that, sir? And you're muted.
Apologies.
Welcome back to 2020, everyone.
This day 27 years ago was one of the greatest days in...
There's something I want to tell you.
What's up? You really had me for a minute, too. I'm not even going to lie.
I didn't freeze. That was how Cartman got out of class. All right,
well, as a matter of fact, it's funny you say it because 36 Mafia has an album where their first, their opening intro on the first track, they purposely put a fake skip in there back when you had CDs, and they literally were like, "No, man, y'all CD is not messed up. I just had to mess with you for a minute."
That's a big jackwagon move. All right, Caleb, what do you got?
So on this day, 27 years ago, Tennessee beat South Carolina 22-7 in an ugly win in Peyton Manning's senior year. But you want to know why that day was significant, Dave?
Why is that significant?
Later that afternoon, Georgia beat the brakes off Florida 37-17. That propelled Tennessee to first in the East and meant they were going to go to Atlanta for the SEC title if they won out, which they had never done to that point because they couldn't get past Florida. And Georgia losing to Florida that day gave them hope that they can go play for the SEC title if they win out in Peyton Manning's senior year. Those were the old days of college football that you loved, right? When you're watching the other teams and hoping they lose so your team can go.
Yes, which is magnified this year, which is why the playoff was a good move. And you need to go ahead and admit you're dead wrong about that.
Oh, yeah, but the SEC title's dead. So what? I mean, this is all about the SEC title, and that's totally dead.
Nico likes getting hit. The response was, I get it. Hit him. Let's go. 72%. It still scares me. No backup. 27%. Here's the answer to that question. You have an opportunity to win a national championship with Nico in there, and you don't without him. So he's got to play his full game, though. He's got to get hit. It's the days of protecting him are over. Now, I put Georgia in there. That's a mistake by me. Tennessee's biggest rival is, let me ask you, is it Vanderbilt or Kentucky, Caleb? Because that's our new poll question.
And I know, okay, so I think between the two, the bigger rival is Kentucky for this reason. Tennessee and Kentucky have this unspoken thing of Kentucky owns Tennessee in basketball, Tennessee owns Kentucky in football. The fight is who's lesser owned in the other sport. Okay, is that fair to say? And by the way, Tennessee is significantly winning that battle right now because they are much lesser owned in basketball than Kentucky is in football because Rick Barnes kind of owns John Calipari, if you think about it.
Okay, so it's our poll question right now. It's on the YouTube page. And Tennessee's biggest rival is Kentucky, Vandy, neither. Let me go ahead and tell you. Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank. It's neither, and I'll tell you why.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Okay, let me go ahead and answer this question for you, if I may. Neither of those are rivals. Why? Because Kentucky has lost 35 of 38, kids. I mean, that's not a rival. Tennessee was not one of Alabama's rivals during the Saban era until 2022. And I would actually argue until this year, because then you've truly established that was not a fluke, and what they did in the first half last year too. But Vanderbilt has only beaten Tennessee 5 times, six times since 1983. They play every year. Caleb, neither one of these games are rivalry games. Neither one of these games affect recruiting. Unless Derek Dooley's in charge, you're going after 2 different sets of athletes. I'm going to challenge you right now to try to convince me that either one of these are truly a rival in every sense of the word.
Rivalries are not just about how competitive a series is. Rivalries are about history, hatred, things like that. Dave, I'm sorry, but like Tennessee fans harbor a level of disdain for Kentucky and Vanderbilt for different reasons. I think they find Vanderbilt fans annoying and also, kind of, you're not no better than me type of feeling towards Vanderbilt because, they're all fancy pants lawyers, basically. With Kentucky, it's more, honestly, an elitist rivalry where Tennessee's like, we're the elite part of East Tennessee. You guys belong in the coal mines to Kentucky. And I think so. I actually disagree. I don't think it's just about how competitive something is. I think sometimes there can be genuine hatred between schools, whether or not there's competitive fire. Notre Dame Navy, that's not a rivalry in the true sense of the word. Notre Dame owns Navy, but I mean, I still consider it a rivalry. Like
I don't.
I do. And by the way, and I'm going to say this, and Tennessee fans are really going to hate me for this, and I'm sorry. Vanderbilt's more of a rivalry for Tennessee than Tennessee is for Florida. And
I agree with that. Why would anybody hate you? No, I agree with that. After what Nick Saban said earlier this year on College Game Day, I think Alabama is Tennessee's biggest rival.
Yes, but Tennessee's not. I mean, what I'm saying is, like, Tennessee fans want to say that Florida's a rivalry. Well, if Vanderbilt's not a rivalry because Tennessee owns Vanderbilt, Dave, the past 20 years, Florida owns Tennessee worse than Tennessee owns Vanderbilt.
No, but there are more factors in that, too. You also have, who is Vanderbilt's rival if it's not Tennessee? With Florida, you would at least say Miami, Florida State, possibly Georgia. Vanderbilt's only option, Kentucky's only option, other than Louisville, is to latch on to some sort of pseudo rivalry with Tennessee. These are not rivalries.
Well, Kentucky and Vanderbilt themselves are rivalries, to be fair. Kentucky and Vanderbilt
really?
themselves.
Rivalries for what?
No, I think Vanderbilt and Kentucky are a rivalry against each other. And it's competitive. This all-time series is 48-44. It doesn't matter that there's nothing to play for. Dave, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. That game is never for anything of significance. Are you going to tell me that's not a rivalry game? I think that's
no. They're in the same state. That's different.
I think Mississippi State, Ole Miss is the best rivalry in the SEC. If you actually watch the game, I don't care that they're not playing for anything.
I wouldn't argue that. I love that game. That's apples and oranges.
What I'm saying is, look, it's not a rivalry in the traditional sense of the word that they're not equally competitive, but it is a rivalry. Like, look, let's be honest, Dave. Tennessee fans they don't like the idea of losing to Vanderbilt. That kind of hacks them off a little bit. And Vanderbilt wants to desperately beat Tennessee more than any other team every year. So, let's just be honest, Dave. If I told a casual Tennessee fan at the beginning of the year, either Kentucky or Arkansas is going to upset you this year, but that'll be your one upset. But who would you rather upset? If for you to tell me it's not a rivalry, the Tennessee fan would have to be like, well, I don't care as long as we go 11-1. If we lose, I don't care which one of them beats us. No, the Tennessee fan is going to be like, I'd rather Arkansas upset us because I don't want to lose to Kentucky. They would say that.
I don't feel that at all.
I think they would absolutely say that.
We may run in different circles. I just don't feel that.
Please. You don't think Tennessee fans won't admit it, but that doesn't mean that, like, what I'm saying is there can be rivals because you just don't want to deal with fan bases of people that are losing. Tennessee don't want to deal with Kentucky fans after losing to them in football. That's the truth of the matter. And I don't blame them for that. But yes, it's the second oldest played game in the SEC, Tennessee, Kentucky.
Okay.
It's the Again, it's
new poll question, and I realize there's a grammatical error in there because my finger slipped, not because I don't know how to write two or two. But who do you hate losing to most, Vandy or Kentucky? I think it's going to be overwhelmingly Vanderbilt, but I don't think that either one is a rival.
Well,
Caleb. I mean,
how about this? There's also an actual, like, there was once a product for the Tennessee-Kentucky rivalry, and I want to get into this. The beer barrel. Can we bring back the beer barrel?
No.
What do you think, Dave? Why?
No.
Dave is all like, these youngins shouldn't be drinking. Go ahead. Tell me why they shouldn't bring back the beer barrel, Dave. I want the beer barrel back.
No, because if they brought it back now, it would change the whole. It would bring back. For those that don't know, can you update us with the history of it and why they stopped with the beer barrel in '98? Is that right?
I believe it was '98, wasn't it?
Okay,
and that was based on that horrible Kentucky accident, wasn't it?
Yes. So then you would have to revisit all of that, and that to me, there's just no point in doing it. And I will say this. I understand the smoking of cigars after the Alabama game. Pretty cool tradition. I like how we're not as PC as we used to be, because a couple of years ago, oh, they're giving kids cigars. Oh my gosh. But now we're kind of okay with it as we're coming back around, I think, as a society, just some normalcy. That's debatable. But the beer barrel, now, I know what you're going to say, that you should lower the drinking age to 18. And I agree with that. But it's not 18. So the majority of your players in a non-COVID world aren't old enough to drink beer. And you're propping that up as something that should be fought for and won for. So to me, it's an antiquated notion and probably not the best idea for the majority of its lifetime.
Yeah, but okay, and this is my big argument. Kentucky. And yes, for those who don't know, in 1998, the week they were set to play Tennessee, they had a horrible car crash in which I believe the name was Arthur Steinmetz was the player who was killed, right? It was one player, right? Or was it multiple players that were killed? I think it was one that was killed, multiple injured. And there was alcohol involved. And it happened the week of the Tennessee-Kentucky game. And so they got rid of the beer barrel. Well, one, it happened before the game, so it's not like the beer barrel was a celebration. It wasn't like the crash was the result of the beer barrel. Two, it's not like Kentucky would have hoisted the beer barrel anyway. They lost to Tennessee that year. And three, hoisting a beer barrel is not a green light to go get drunk and drive. I mean, this is what I'm talking about with the hypocrisy of it. Just because, I mean, you don't want to bring this up, but alcohol was involved in that crash.
Okay.
No one is saying drink and drive because you celebrate with a beer barrel after winning a game.
Okay, but I think you're being maybe a little bit hypocritical here when you're talking about. I understand you see hypocrisy on one side. I kind of see hypocrisy in your stance on the other side, that you're admitting that players are oftentimes too young to drink beer. And no, legally they are.
Okay.
You have to
Yes,
admit.
legally.
Now we could debate whether or not it's right, and you and I actually agree on that. But I mean, to me, you wouldn't. I mean, there's some gray areas with hemp and stuff like that, but you wouldn't. You know, I don't think you would do the hemp box, brought to you by the Hemp House, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Maybe you would. Maybe you should replace it with the hemp box. The battle for the hemp box.
I mean, when you know what? Before weed was legal everywhere, the places that it was very popular, Oregon and Washington, the Oregon-Washington game should have been the Hemp Bowl. I'd have loved it. I wouldn't care. Thumb your nose at stupid laws, okay? And a stupid law is that 18-year-olds can't drink, all right? So, yeah, okay, you can send them to go die halfway across the world for a stupid war, but you can't let them drink a beer? No, bring back the beer barrel. I want the beer barrel back. You know what? This will be great for you, Dave. When UNLV plays Nevada, call it the Hooker Bowl, okay? Because it's Nevada prostitution.
Yeah, if it was up to Caleb, every time you play Miami, it's for the Coke mirror.
Oh my gosh! Hey, Miami versus who would be Miami's best?
Florida International.
The Coke Bowl. But I mean, look,
terrible people right now.
We are terrible people, but no one thinks that, like, I mean, well, maybe some do, but like, I don't think it's like as universally accepted that Coke should be legal the way it is.
I don't want to get
beer.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, like, I think we all agree that 18-year-old college kids should be allowed to drink a beer every now and then, and maybe even have some liquor. I think you should have it should be the battle of the whiskey barrel: Kentucky bourbon, Tennessee whiskey. Boom, battle of the whiskey barrel. Retire the beer barrel. It's like, y'all didn't want the beer barrel. We're going to liquor. Try that. The battle of the whiskey barrel.
I just want to be clear. This is not Tennessee, but I did have a player one time that told me that cocaine had become popular among the team. And I said, well, that seems weird, because I thought, you know, I don't partake necessarily, but I thought that made you lose weight. And I said, so how did that affect your play? And he goes, we are fantastic in the first and third quarters. And it wears off. He said, our kick coverage and kick return is unbelievably physical out of the chute in both halves. That is not a Tennessee player that told me that. It's a player from another program.
For the first, you know, Josh Heupel's program was known, particularly when he first took over at Tennessee, for dominating the first and third quarters.
No, it's not that.
Dave says that Dave accuses Josh Heupel of giving his players.
Yes, offering it up with Tony Montana style. Just there you go, big bowl in the middle, kind of like the Jacksonville Jaguars had that axe, and then a punter almost cut its foot off. You did not know about that? They had an axe and a big piece of wood, so you chopped the wood. And the punter came in, and he hadn't chopped a lot of wood in his life and almost cut his foot off. The irony is that it was a punter, too. So there was a lot of good things about that. All right, Caleb. So where are we going now?
Lady Vols.
Oh, no, yeah. We want to get the Lady Vols. But first, we want to do the Lady Vols right now. They didn't just score some points. They didn't just score a lot of points. They scored a whole lot of points. I know it's a Football Friday brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. But what the Lady Vols did under Kim Caldwell, the expecting Kim Caldwell, was pretty darn impressive. And I'll tell you, too, I talked to a source who's had a lot of goings on, who has talked to a lot of the players involved in that team, and they knew that was coming. They think they're going to run a lot of people out of the building. I was told that last Wednesday, not this Wednesday, but last Wednesday. They think they're going to run a lot of people out of the building. I will tell you this. I'm not going to pretend to know every player as well as Caleb, but the confidence is much, much higher than it was last year or any time in recent memory, to the point that this person actually wondered aloud if it was cockiness. But when you score 130-something points, that's confidence.
Yes, and so the Tennessee Lady Vols beat Carson Newman yesterday, 135-49 by 86 points. It was an exhibition, and yes, it was Carson Newman. You expected Tennessee to dominate that game. But Dave, as you know, when in college basketball, when you play lesser opponents, the way you expect to dominate is by scoring a ton of the paint, because they just don't have the size to compete, right? That's how you usually expect to win. Lady Vols didn't win that way, although they did dominate the paint. They scored 58 points. But that was because of their defense. Let me just throw a few stat lines at you, Dave, real quick. Guess how many steals the Lady Vols had in the game yesterday? Just guess.
I'm going to go with 28, because I know that you're going to pick a high number.
You were close, and you were still under. It was 30.
Yeah.
They had 30 steals. Guess how many turnovers Carson Newman had?
I'm going to go with 42.
Darn, you're close. You're doing well. It was 43.
Yeah.
43 turnovers. Tennessee was 19 of 48 from three, which is just solid from three. Not like blow you away, but that's still really, really good. They had 6 players score double figures, but here's the real crazy stat too. They took 94 shots. 94 shots, which is an insane number, shooting over 50% on the night. They also, I mean, this is the big thing. Kim Caldwell wants to play up-tempo, fast break, aggressive. They had 58 fast break points. They turned up the tempo. They played aggressive, and this is what you're in for all year, Tennessee Lady Vols fans. It won't be Carson Newman, but you're going to see a lot of running, a lot of athleticism. She doesn't really have the exact team she wants yet, But it's going to be one of the most fun teams to watch. And Dave, something I thought of recently. A lot of these players she got in the transfer portal were tall, athletic players who couldn't shoot. And I said that the problem is she needs shooters too. Well, someone brought up to me, they said, well, a lot of these players are better shooters than you think when they're uncontested. And with Caldwell's defensive scheme, there's going to be a lot of fast breaks, meaning there's going to be a lot of uncontested threes. So the three-point shooting is going to get a lot better. And that was kind of on display yesterday. And this is was the Bruce Pearl philosophy back in the day. For those who don't remember, when Bruce Pearl first introduced the up-tempo flex, the flex and the 2-2-1 press to the SEC, Chris Lofton was going to Chris Lofton. He was going to hit his threes. You expect that. You didn't expect Jawan Smith to be a 40% from three shooter, though. I mean, that's not something you saw coming. And that's where things got different, was because Jawan Smith in this system was getting so many open looks. And that's Kim Caldwell's philosophy. It is a Nolan Richardson 40 minutes of hell type of system that Kim Caldwell's running that is going to make them one of the most fun teams to watch in women's basketball. And honestly, Dave, here's the crazy part. It is a complete middle finger to what the older Lady Vol contingency demands this team run and play.
Okay, let me ask you this. Did she set the bar too high?
No, I don't think people are going to expect her to repeat Carson Newman. It's Carson Newman. It's an exhibition.
Okay.
What I think she set the bar is, look, this is to get a young crop of Tennessee fans to start following the Lady Vols, and this was why Danny White made this hire, by the way. And Jimmy Hyams has told us Danny White hires. He's a marketer more than he is a guy trying to win. He's a marketer, and this was a marketing hire, which, by the way, is not a bad idea when women's basketball is kind of on the rise, and you need to help this sport generate a profit. The old school Lady Vol fan base contingency that believes that you have to have been graced with Pat Summitt's hand on your shoulder at some point in your life to be qualified to coach Tennessee. Demands that you win with defense and rebounding and, a slow pace, use your really, really tall players and control the clock. That's how they want to play. Guys, Kim Caldwell's saying, yeah, no, not doing that. And honestly, with the blessing of Danny White, they're just saying, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to turn the tempo up. We're going to get aggressive. We're going to put on a show to bring in new fans, and we don't really care what the tradition of the Lady Vols is. And I mean, I think that's upsetting. That's going to be upsetting to a lot of people, Dave. It's kind of like when Tennessee, I just talked about how they moved away from the single wing with Doug Dickey in the 60s. Kim Caldwell's Doug Dickey for the Lady Vols. But
let me ask you this. You're acting almost as if this is going to be some sort of huge transition. To me, if you go back, like if Josh Heupel said, I've decided, like we were talking about earlier, to run the triple option and play defensive football. If you go in that direction, I think you lose some fans, but they're going to more aggressive style. So I don't think you're going to have any pushback from the Lady Vol fans other than just their expectations are too high.
You can go back and look at, so again, in the 1960s, when Doug Dickey, like I was talking about, installed the T formation, which was, again, everybody else had been doing it since the early 50s, and Tennessee was the last to hold on to the single wing. The traditionalist of the Neyland Legion was like, we don't win this way. We win with the T formation. They were upset about that. They were upset about the new traditions he saw. They were upset about him bringing the power T back. They hated that too. And Doug Dickey's whole thing was, look, guys, I got to move Tennessee to the 20th century and mid 20th century in this. And this is, I get your point, Dave, but this is the thing with basketball in general, and you see this problem a lot. I'm just going to say it. Older basketball fans have a belief in the way the game is supposed to be played. And it's the boring style that maybe they grew up playing when they played high school basketball in the state of Tennessee. I think for those who don't know, Tennessee women's high school basketball until 1978 you had an offense and a defense. Basically, you had 5 players on one side and 5, maybe it was 3 on one side and 3 on the other. It was a wild way they played. They don't like the concept of running in full court and offensive firepower. It's not what they believe in.
I don't think there's going to be any pushback at all. I mean, I think you're going to have some people that'll come up to me at the gym, and I had one this morning ask me, who are they going to get recruiting-wise over the Lady Vols? And I said, I don't know. But I think that you have to remember that this fan base is loyal. And you talk about older, not to sound crude, but some of those older fans are not as engaged as they used to be. And I mean, I don't want to sound mean here, but I just don't think you're going to have any issue with the Lady Vol fan base and the style of play. The issue with the Lady Vol fan base is going to continue to be you're not going to have a coach that's going to win 7 national championships, and you need to get used to it. Right?
Yeah, you're not. And by the way, UConn's got to get used to that too. Gina Iamaleava hasn't won a national title since 2016.
Sure.
And it's
like,
that's
okay.
just,
If Pat Summitt was hired now and she was every bit as good of a coach, I want you to think about this for just a second. And she coached how many years, Caleb? From 74 to
basically
a quarter of a century.
38 years.
38 years. Okay. If she's the exact same coach hired now, when there are a lot more teams that can win a national championship and the sport is a lot more balanced than it used to be, how many championships would she win? Think about that for a second. The UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link is right down below, owned by Vol fans. Caleb, it wouldn't be 7.
No, she won 8.
Sorry. So I misspoke earlier. 8. Don't expect 8. But if she were hired right now and you knew how great she was, it would still be incredible if she won 4 nowadays because the sport is so much more balanced.
And I'm going to be honest, she'd have a harder time than most because Pat Summitt, the way she nixed the rivalry with UConn, she believed in a purist stance on how to approach the game in the sense of she didn't believe you use things to your advantage with recruiting. So for those who don't know why she ended the series with UConn, it was because Gina Iamaleava won out a battle with her over Maya Moore. And the way he won out that battle was she believes touring, helping Maya Moore tour ESPN facilities all the time. And ESPN being in Bristol had by that point, almost all their women's basketball analysis was former UConn players. And Pat Summitt had a problem with that. And so Gina Iamaleava was clearly like sending a pipeline of kids to do that, and she hated that, and so she nixed the series.
Well, and if I can add to that, he had to give them money because the cafeterias at the ESPN facility are way overpriced.
So
it's just ridiculous.
Well, there's another layer.
$18 for lunch.
But also here's the other point. She, for instance, Pat Summitt, did not believe in showing players the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in Knoxville because she thought that was an unfair recruiting advantage. That's how she thought. She tried to now you and I know you can't you take advantage of what you have, right? I don't care if it's unfair or not. When you're recruiting, you use your unfair advantages. And she was radically against that on the recruiting trail to her detriment. Now I don't know if she finally would have changed and updated with that over time. I would hope she would have, but that was hurting her in recruiting towards the end anyway. I mean, look, she's a Candace Parker recruit away from her last national title being in 1998. And
Chattanooga Mortgage, congratulations. Your home search just got easier. They can help you with your credit. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage, chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com. All right, let's get to the last look. We save the best for last as Caleb will make his picks. And what do you got going on, sir? Who stands out first as we pick the games this upcoming weekend? Brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me. No contacts, no glasses. LASIK vision correction. Caleb, what do we got?
All right, so we have this week 9, 10, 12. We have 12 SEC teams playing, and 10 of them are playing each other, which gives us 7 SEC games to predict, plus 2 top 25 games, and I have a few extra for best bets. So let's start with one of the big ones of the weekend, big noon kickoff, Ohio State, Penn State. It's at Penn State. Dave, am I crazy for trusting Penn State and going Penn State +3? Ohio State's favored by 3. I say take Penn State on the spread and take the over 46.
That's crazy. Are they having a whiteout, which sounds incredibly racist at Penn State?
I think those are only for night games.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because dressing all up in white at night, there's nothing wrong with that.
As long as they don't have hoods on.
All right. What's next, Caleb?
Well, wait. All right, so you disagree? You don't think Penn State will cover?
No, I think you don't like Ohio State and Ryan Day.
I think you don't like Penn State and James Franklin. So we're just,
I like James Franklin. He told me, he goes, "You must be the ultimate Tennessee fan. Your hair's orange."
Oh my gosh. All right. So Dave's taking it personal. All right. So Arkansas, Ole Miss. Dave, this is a tough one for me, but I think Arkansas plus 7.5. They're at home, and I'm going to say take the under 53.5. I don't know if they'll win, but Sam Pittman is going to keep this game close, and he may screw it up with the coaching debacle at the end of the game, but they're going to keep it within a touchdown.
Hey now. I'll rock with that.
All righty. Next, Auburn and Vandy. Guys, y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm actually taking Auburn to cover the 7.5 point spread. They're at home. I think Auburn covers the 7.5, and I'd say take the under 48.5. I say Auburn wins kind of the way they won against Kentucky, like 24-10, honestly, at home.
Hey now. I can roll with that. We're agreeing way too much. What do you got, Caleb?
All right, next, Florida. No, I'm going to get to Florida in a minute. Maine and Oklahoma.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad. Maine.
Take Maine plus 35.5. I don't think Oklahoma is capable of scoring 35 points to win by 35. So take Maine plus 35.5 and take the under 45.5.
If you're betting on Maine, you need to call a 1-800 number. We'll have that number for you next week as we've entered into a partnership with the gambling website.
You think Oklahoma's capable of scoring 35 points?
No, I just don't think you should be betting on Maine.
I had to pick every SEC game.
I have like 3 strict rules. 1, no parlays. 2, never bet on a team that you root for. And 3 is never bet on Maine.
4 should be never bet on your son's school because he's about to be on this list too, or that's about to be on this list too, and that would be UMass. Because Mississippi State is favored by 17 over UMass. I keep betting on them, and I'm going to keep doing it. I don't care if they let me down. Mississippi State, they're going to cover the 17-point spread, and I'm going to say take the over 60.5. I think Mississippi State by themselves scores 61 points.
Okay, I'll agree with that. I'll go with that.
All right, so here comes head explosion time for Dave. Florida, Georgia.
All right, we'll get to that last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
To visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com. Simply the best.
I'm your Huckleberry.
Who you got, Caleb?
Florida plus 14.5. Georgia's going to win, but Florida's going to cover, baby. I'm going to over 51.5. Florida plus 14.5. This is going to be one of those games that Georgia sleepwalks through because they got Ole Miss and Tennessee coming up. And because of that, they're going to look ugly in this game, even though they might win.
You suck, you jackass.
I don't think so. I think Georgia found themselves in Austin.
All righty. I think Georgia's going to this is what Kirby Smart does, okay? So that's my call for that. I'll save Tennessee for last. A couple more before my best bets. South Carolina, I got them plus 3 against Texas A&M. Texas A&M's got a hangover from last week. They're going to South Carolina. I think I don't know if South Carolina pulls the upset, but I think they could, honestly. And so I got South Carolina plus 3.
Okay, this is why I don't gamble, because I let my emotions get in the way. So I'm going to say...
That's crazy.
Talking to Ollie Lane, if you didn't hear that earlier in the program, go back and listen to it. He was a part of the South Carolina game in 2022, and he thinks Connor Stallion's fingerprints are all over it. So I officially don't like Shane Beamer because I think that's dirty pool. So you will never see me pick South Carolina, even if they're underdogs to Powell High School. I mean, but I don't gamble, so it's okay for that to affect my judgment. You do, so don't let it affect your judgment.
I'm not. South Carolina is going to cover the 3-point spread. They may even win and take the over 43.5 in this game because their offense is going to score. And then by the
way, I got another idea for you since you love the beer barrel. They should have the raising of the big gambling app for a rivalry game. Like instead of the golden axe, the golden app, brought to you by Bet Online.
That should be the Nevada one. Vegas versus Nevada. UNLV versus Nevada.
Do that with this. Lord.
All right,
I mean,
so,
you're telling them that it's okay to gamble, just like you're telling them it's okay to drink underage.
It shouldn't be underage. Anyways, top 25 ACC matchup that you never thought either of these things would apply to these two teams, Dave. But Pitt at SMU on Saturday night. I say Pitt's going to cover the 7. They're underdogs by 7.5. I say take Pitt plus 7.5 and take the over 56.5. And
I haven't rooted for Pitt since Tony Dorsett's day. Did you know it's Dorset instead of Dorset?
I did not, actually.
Did you know it's Theismann instead of Theismann, but it rhymes with Heisman?
Did not know that either. All right, so before we get to best bets, let me get to Tennessee and Kentucky real quick.
Is that not on your best bets? That's the easiest one on the board.
There are some actually easier ones, believe it or not, but this is close. But I might parlay this one because I'm saying Tennessee minus 7.5 and the under 45.5. Because Dave, I don't think Kentucky goes over to. I don't think they cross midfield in this game.
Cross midfield.
I don't think they cross. I don't think they cross midfield.
Well, then that's a big for Mark Stoops.
You suck.
But yeah, Tennessee covers and take the under because Tennessee's defense will put it this way. I think Tennessee shuts out Kentucky unless there's a turnover on offense. Tennessee's defense does not surrender any legitimate points. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir. What do you got next?
All right, so my best bet. So my top under of the week. I'm following Dave's logic on this, by the way, Dave. You got me hip to this, and I've just been following you on it. I'm betting against teams that are traveling 2 time zones. And so, therefore, I got Michigan plus 14.5 against Oregon. I think Oregon wins.
Okay, I heard you mention that yesterday. The stat I gave you was actually, I think it was 3 time zones.
Michigan is 3 time zones. That's they're on Eastern. I'm pretty sure, aren't they?
They're not.
Yeah, no, they are. They are. Hold on, I'm gonna look this up. Michigan time zone. Michigan is on. Michigan's an Eastern time zone. Yep. So Oregon's got to travel 3 time zones, and it's not daylight savings till Sunday. So, yeah, I think Oregon they're going to win, but they're not going to cover. The next one.
Does that give the all-clad white guys in Penn State an extra hour to haunt around in the middle of the night? Go ahead, Caleb.
Nothing like running around rural Pennsylvania in all white.
I mean, literally, somebody came up with the idea. How about a whiteout? And everybody agreed with it.
What was it Phil said from Modern Family? If you ain't white, you ain't right.
Well, who's the comedian who does a great bit? He goes, listen, Special Olympics are a great thing, but can you imagine being the first guy who brought it up? Great thing. You say we're going to race them? Go ahead.
My top favorite of the week, and this is a wild one, but I'm going the 2 time zones on this one because 2 time zones still, they haven't been good on the spread. I'm taking Nebraska minus 7 over UCLA. I think Nebraska wins by more than a touchdown against UCLA at home in this one.
Here, first down.
Sorry.
That's hot.
I like it.
And all right, and now my over of the week, Louisville Clemson over 62.5. I love points in that game. Points galore in that game. My under of the week, USC going to Washington. Take the under 55.5. I think Lincoln Riley's offense is dead, and they ain't gonna score at Washington. And my super dog of the week, I think Oklahoma State upsets Arizona State. That's my super dog pick.
Let's go. All right, Caleb. Thank you, sir. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. But we're not done. No, we are not. Why? Because we have this fantastic prize to give away. Let me reach back. Autographed by Dylan Sampson. This mini helmet provided by our friends at Sports Treasures. Follow them, Sports Treasures TN, on Facebook. They give stuff away all the time. So if you want to be a member of Hooker's Corner and be eligible for weekly, monthly prizes and Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge, all you have to do is be a member of Hooker's Corner, and you can win great stuff, get increased recruiting coverage, and also more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. So are you ready to spin the wheel, Caleb? Are you excited? Are you fired up as I dial things up? Say something intriguing.
Let's spin it. Dial up the wheel. Let's spin it. Let's get this thing rolling, Dave.
Okay, here we go. All right. Everybody is on there that's a member of Hooker's Corner. And I don't know why that's so small.
Because you have the hook. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Okay. I might just take you down altogether. Just cut you from the show. Okay. So here we go. Here is the great spin. We'll see who wins. There she goes. No whammies, no whammies, no whammies. Crawdad. Crawdad's our winner. I'll get in touch with you, Crawdad. Congratulations. You win this Dylan Sampson autographed helmet. I will reach out to you and get your mailing address, and we will get that right to you. At the end of the day, I have the Tennessee Vols winning 35-11 because everybody was picking 35-10. So I'm going 35-11.
So you're taking the over 45.5 by half a point.
I am.
Wow, Dave is fading me on the over-under. I'm going under 45.5 because where's Kentucky going to get 11 points? Is Nico going to spot that by throwing an interception?
They've got a great return guy, the brown guy. That's his last. That's his last name.
Dave talking about white hoods and brown guys.
That's his last name. I'm not referring to the color of his skin. All right. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.